Shalom everybody. This video is unlike any other video on this channel. Its content will be explosive and beyond revelatory, even world-shaking. For the first time anywhere, the true mysteries of the elite and the higher perversions that occurred will be made known. And with these keys, one will see with clear eyes the great evil that is occurring at the highest levels in secret. I must first preface, it would be highly profitable to have an understanding first of Shabtai Tzvi, Yaakov Frank, and others. A great sefer by Robert Sefer called 1666 Redemption Through Sin will provide a great overview behind the nature of the historical events that occurred. But unlike that sefer, we will begin to understand the true esoteric nature of what has occurred and how these teachings in place of the true light have spread throughout many occult organizations is the foundation and root of many of these things, and with it we will behold what many of these societies are up to, and more importantly, the reason why. Now, it is also very important that although these mysteries will be revealed through the Kabbalah and they will be extraordinarily revelatory, in no way do any of these things have anything to do with Judaism or Jews at all. Therefore, no part of this video should be taken as anti-Semitic in any way. And neither should any of these keys or mysteries be applied to Judaism in any way. Viewer discretion is advised. Much of this content is of a very mature nature and not suitable for everyone. That being said, let us begin. According to many different sources, the Bavarian Order of the Illuminati was founded by Yaakov Frank, Adam Weishaupt, and Mayer Amstel Rothschild. However, this order of the Illuminati was only the outer order. In fact, according to some sources, Adam Weishaupt was in relations with the daughter of Yaakov Frank named Eve Frank, and that these two were an archetypal Adam and Eve of a new age or era. To fully understand the nature of what is going to be said, we must first understand that this order of the Illuminati, who pushed forward very liberal ideas, was but an outer or more exoteric order compared to the more esoteric inner order. The more esoteric inner order were followers of Shabtai Tzvi, a group some called the Dunme, although this name was given by their enemies and not a name that they themselves called themselves by. It is also important to note that at the time this order was operating, they were already excommunicated, this being that they were not a part of Judaism itself. Now, this more inner group practiced very bizarre rituals and the laws of inversion. This law came about from a very esoteric reading of certain passages in the Talmud, reciting a specific story in which a young boy had a near-death experience and he went into the upper worlds. And when he returned, it was asked, "My son, what did you see?" And he responded, "Father, I saw a reversed world, a world where the lower beings were above and the higher beings were below." And it was responded to him, "My son, you have seen a perfect world." Now let us enter in to the great perversions that occurred at the absolute highest levels. It is known amongst very learned Kabbalists that these perversions occurred amidst the Lurianic Kabbalah. This being said, the Lurianic Kabbalah is a very closed practice and is very advanced. Most people require 30 or 40 years of study before they can even begin to study Lurianic Kabbalah with any type of seriousness. And even then, and even beyond these levels, do they actually enter into the levels of revealing it. In order for us to understand these mysteries, we must first lay down some foundational understanding. We'll begin with the concept of the interactions between a Partsufim named Ima and a Partsufim named Zerainpin. The source for this tikkun will be in Eitz HaChaim Shabagan, a sefer that displays the tikkunim for Eitz Chaim. Now it must be understood first that the Netzach, Hod, and Yisod of one world form the Chokmah, Bina, and Da'as of another world. And it must also be understood that the Netzach, Hod, and Yisod of Ima contain inside of it the Netzach, Hod, and Yisod of Abba. Now, Zerainpin is called son. Ima means mother, and Abba means father. I will first give the holy explanation, as I am the only one who has ever openly revealed this mystery, and before this matter was made known in Likutei Yira, it had never been known. The understanding is that the Netzach, Hod, and Yisod of Ima, an example the mother, this would refer to the two hips in the reproductive organ, is the location where the brains of the baby developed, an example it's Chokmah, Bina, and Da'as. And in absence of the true revelator, they made horrendous errors. Now I will reveal how it was interpreted by the Frankists. It must be understood that what we're dealing with at these levels is a group and an organization that are incredibly initiated into the most advanced and esoteric levels of the Kabbalah. For this reason, there was an outer and an inner order. The outer order, as stated before, was for the uninitiated and more exoteric and non-lineal. However, the inner order remained a group of heretics that had long been separated from Judaism itself. They and this group, having been excommunicated, continued in many of the same traditions that were found amongst Judaism, although they themselves were no longer a part of Judaism. This inner order practiced the secrets and the traditions that were laid down by Shabtai Tzvi. They understood the concept of a new Torah that was coming, the Torah of Atzilus. Atzilus means emanation, and as it had just been made known to you, was revealed for the first time, the emanatory level of these secrets. That is to say, we see the brains of the baby are developed in the Netzach Hod Yisod of its mother. At the time, they did not have access to these teachings, neither during the time of Yaakov Frank. However, in absence of the truth, another interpretation was laid in its place. We must also understand that Ima means mother, Abba means father, and Zerainpin means son, for Zerainpin is the son of Ima and Abba. I will quote from Moach Gan Eden, The Brain of the Garden of Eden, written by the chief magician of Mystery Babylon. It states on page 135, through Tavunah he founded the heavens, Proverbs chapter 3 verse 19. That is to say, through Bina, which is called Tavunah, he founded the heavens, an example the Partsufim called Zerainpin. All in the mystery of Tavunah and Zerainpin. Now, the word he founded may also signify to be erect, or firm, or hard, meaning the sexual arousal of Zerainpin comes by way of Bina, channeling her Hasidim through Tavunah to Zerainpin, as explained in the Lurianic texts. So, the Oedipus complex is simply a hidden, subtle residual image of this higher archetypal construct, and these holy mysteries are explained in the Lurianic texts, where we read, the mouth of Yisod of Ima opened in the midst of Zerainpin, Sha'ar Pasukim, Parashas Bereshis, Siman 4. And the Yisod of Ima spread until the chest of Zerainpin, Parashas Vayetza, Siman 28. And it was explained that the Netzach, Hod, and Yisod of Ima form the Chokmah, Bina, and Da'as of Zerainpin. And it is explaining that the Yisod of Ima spread until the chest of Zerainpin. That is to say, his Tiferet, which is identified as the chest. Now, there is a concept of the Hasidim and Gevurot that enter into Da'as, as is shown here. These 5 Chasadim and 5 Gevurot enter in to the Da'as of Zerainpin from Chokmah and Bina. They spread through his body in the aforementioned manner. Now we may understand the nature of our foundations for what is about to be said. So in absence of the Atzil level and the inability to interpret these mysteries in the sublime and esoteric way, it was rendered into the literal, from which it was derived the following. And see there and the many other places in his gates where he discusses the ejaculation of the revealed light, which are the Chasadim of Ima's phallus into Zerainpin. Yisod is the reproductive organ, and how they interpreted this is that the Netzach Hod Yisod entering into the Chokmah Bina Da'as of Zerainpin meant that the phallus of Yisod, which they identify as a hermaphroditic figure, entered into the Da'as, or the throat of Zerainpin, for the throat of the body is identified with the sphere of Da'as. They then interpret that the Chasadim and Gevurot spreading in Da'as is the ejaculation coming from Ima. He continues, and this phallus extends all the way down to the phallus of Zerainpin, touching it and arousing it. And they see that the Yisod of Ima enters in to the Da'as of Zerainpin, which they interpret it as the phallus of Ima entering into the throat of Zerainpin, and that this extends downward to the Yesod of Zerainpin, by which they say Zerainpin is aroused. And so he continues, and there are many other numerous examples of transgenderism, anal sex, oral sex, homosexuality, incest, etc., all parabolized throughout the Lurianic texts describing the actions and processes of the highest universes. I will simply provide one more very super esoteric telistic example proving the permissibility of homosexuality, incestuous pedophilia in the highest universe. Behold, it is written, when the Yesod of Abba spread in the midst of the Yesod of Zerainpin, this is called Seth, the son of Adam Arishon. He quotes Chaim Vital Sha'ar HaKadmot 45b. Again, not only do we see Ima penetrate her son, but also Abba penetrates his own son. Because the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima spread into Da'as and Tiferes, and the Yesod of Abba specifically spreads all the way down to the Yesod of Zerainpin, they interpreted this as these deranged and bizarre acts of incest, etc. What is important to understand about the nature of all of this is that they had a belief that this lower world needed to be made in the likeness of the upper world, and that accordingly, what was forbidden in this world was permissible in the upper world, and therefore their idea was that this world must be made in the likeness of the upper world. And so they began to engage in all of these types of bizarre practices, bringing down all of these horrendous interactions with each other and committing all types of heinous acts in order to, in their mind and eyes, reflect the higher order of the upper worlds. Now, the problem with this is that these people who engage in all of these extraordinarily disturbing, incestuous, and pedophiliac behaviors do this as a form of religion. And because we're dealing with people that are incredibly learned in the Kabbalah, and because we're dealing with people that are doing this in an incredibly religious way, we fail to understand the true level of the dangers that we're discussing here. But with this, we may understand why we see all of the bizarre rituals that are occurring at the highest levels, all of the pedophilia, all of the transgenderism, all of the homosexual incest, and everything else that is going on at the highest levels amongst these supposed occult organizations and these bizarre groups of certain elites, etc. And why all of these agendas, etc., are being pushed in one way or another. Because those individuals are pushing this world to be a reflective order of what they believe the higher world is the image of. He continues onward, and he states, and if a man shall take his sister, his father's daughter, or his mother's daughter, and see her nakedness, it is chesed, a reproach, a disgrace. Sefer Vayikra, Leviticus 20:17. He goes on, this is very interesting. We all know that chesed signifies loving kindness to the highest degree, and as we have with many words in Hebrew, every word in Hebrew is binary in essence, containing with it its thesis and antithesis. And this is clearly displayed with the word chesed. On the most esoteric level, this verse is actually referring to the chesed between Zerainpin and Malkut, brother and sister. And the universe is higher than Asiya. And so we have our first clear example of the dictum cited above. In our universe, incest is forbidden, but in the higher universes, among Ha'elokim, incest is permitted. And this is the holy mystery of the holy incestuous union between Naomi and Ruth, and the mystery of Bina and Malchut, as explained in Sefer Tzaddik Yisar Ha'olam. He continues, and this brings us to the Jewish Sigmund Freud's
Oedipus complex, which has its roots in the deepest, most esoteric levels of Kabbalah. For as already explained, holy sexual incest between the Divine Mother and her Divine Son is chesed, loving kindness. For it is the sphere of chesed that is the nexus and link between mother and son. Also, the fact that Abba and Ima, containing these spheros, were hermaphroditic in nature. An example, in addition to them having a female reproductive organ, they had a male reproductive organ. We see that the Yesod of Ima contains the Yesod of Abba. Well, the Yesod of Ima means the reproductive organ of a woman, and the Yesod of Abba means the reproductive organ of a male, and that these hermaphroditic entities are penetrating the son, an example, Zerampin, in various different bizarre ways, from the throat to the rectum, etc. And the same thing happens with the nukva, or the daughter. From this, there are also other secrets. An example, because the spheros of Abba are inside of the spheros of Ima, we see that from their interpretations, Abba puts on the garments of Ima, or the father puts the garments of the mother. Or an example, men should look like women. And similarly, we find that Ima garbs herself inside of Zerampin. An example, Ima garbs herself in the likeness of her son, and therefore women should become like men. We begin to behold deeper things like this, including the aspect of the Nukva and the kings of Edom, and we know that when the Nukva first emerged, it emerged in the aspect of death. It is known that Nukva is the secret of David, or Dodai, or my beloved, and it is known that he was born dead. And so we find a great promotion, an example of abortions and the death of babies. Sometimes you hear bizarre cases of ritualistic births for the purpose of sacrifices, things like this. We know that the limbs of Adam HaRishon fell off, as it were. We find that these things often reflect in the order of these limbs being torn off, etc. And there's incredibly dark, deep things that are way beyond the scope of this video. And again, we find ourselves here, now having revealed just a breadcrumb of the nature of the understanding of these elites and occult organizations that are operating at the highest levels, and the reason why they are doing it. And this is way beyond Satanism. For those who call themselves Satanists, in fact, are more humanist in nature. They would be staunchly against many of the things that were just stated. But we find that through this horrendous corruption and disfigurement of the true esoteric keys, the elite, who in their own understanding believe themselves to be superior intellectually with a higher IQ and SQ than the rest of the world, having themselves studied these mysteries and having themselves been initiated into the highest levels of these mysteries, only for themselves to have been introduced a horrendous corruption. And this corruption then formed the basis for a new religion, a secret religion, which is now pushed upon the entire world, though the world does not know it. Yet, if you open your eyes and look around you, you will see it everywhere. A religion where these secret keys that were just laid down before you are the central basis of reality, where this world is to reflect the upper world. And in the same likeness, all of these interactions become permissible as opposed to forbidden. And so we have come to the conclusion of this particular video. With the revelations that have been made known to you, if you should gaze and peer behind the OTO and the perversions of all of the Western occultists, who they themselves are but bastardized versions of these inner esoteric Frankist teachings, and should you probe the highest mysteries of the elite, to find amongst them these hidden teachings, you will see clearly the great evil that has subdued the world, and the reason why the world is moving in the direction that it is moving. Perhaps there will be a part 2 of such horrifying revelations where there is still yet but more mysteries at hand. Consider very carefully the disturbing things that were made mention of in this video. It is encouraged for you all to either share or save this video, as I don't imagine it will last very long. It is incredibly imperative that the correction to all of these mysteries be made known, as it was revealed the true Atziluthic level, because in absence of understanding that the Netzach Hod Yesod of Ima forms the brains of the baby's development, in absence of the Torah of Atzilus, these things fell into great perversion, and a likeness of the other emerged, and the world has been corrupted by the failing of understanding these levels properly. In great ignorance, the world has been led astray. And now many people have been led astray, and at the highest levels, they are performing all types of bizarre rituals amongst each other and amongst other elite. The Western orders have become completely corrupt, completely sexualized and perverse, such as the OTO and other organizations, such as the Rosicrucians and more. We find the bizarre parties, or as one person said, the Diddy parties in the Epstein Islands, and all of the other disgusting, abominable things that are occurring amongst those elite, who they themselves more than likely know, to some degree or another, all of these mysteries, for which they ritualistically reenact. And it is precisely for this reason all of the mysteries of the Torah of Atzilus must be revealed and corrected. We must reveal the underlying illimitable as the true cause of reality, and restore the true light in place of this false light, which has, as a garment, concealed these things. And unfortunately, these things were done in ignorance, for they themselves, having not accessed the true Torah of Atzilus, took only a likeness in its place. With that being said, Shalom and Selah.